Ever wish you could just like stay calm no matter what's going on around you? Like you're this like still point and everything's chaotic, but you're just totally chill.
That's the power of equanimity,
Yeah.
It's about mental and emotional balance, and it's actually considered one of the 4 sublime states in Buddhism.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what we're diving into today. This whole idea of finding that like unshakable inner peace. And, we've got this amazing source on equanimity that you share.
Oh, yeah. It's full of really practical wisdom.
So, like, no more getting blown around by all the little things, right? We're going deep on equanimity.
I'm in.
Awesome. So, the source, it describes equanimity as, well, it uses a couple of really cool images.
Yeah.
Like being a still flame, even when the wind's blowing like crazy, or even better, like...
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, like the stillness in the deepest part of the ocean.
Yes, exactly. Think about it. The surface, it's all waves and chaos. Right. But deep down, total stillness, equanimity is about tapping into that peace that's always there no matter what's happening up top.
I love that. So we're not talking about like suppressing your emotions, right? More like working with them in a new way.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about denying your emotions. It's about learning to ride those waves,
Yeah.
instead of getting swept under by every single one.
Okay, yeah. Learning to surf those emotional waves. I like it.
And this source we're looking at, it's like the ultimate guide to becoming a pro surfer, emotionally speaking.
All right. Sign me up. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about why this even matters. Like, why bother with cultivating equanimity, aside from sounding kind of cool?
Right. Well, think about it. Life, it throws us curveballs, highs, lows, moments of pure joy, moments that just completely test us. Equanimity, that's your anchor. That sense of peace that stays strong no matter what's going on outside.
It's like that story from the source about the monk.
Oh, yeah. The one known for being so unbelievably calm.
Yes, exactly. People were just amazed by how he could be so unfazed by anything.
He used to say he welcomed joy and sorrow like guests. Neither one gets to stay forever.
I love that because it's so true, right? That's real wisdom. It's not about avoiding the ups and downs. It's about how we relate to them,
Mm-hmm.
Not clinging to the good stuff or freaking out about the bad.
Exactly. It's clinging to those fleeting experiences, whether they're good or bad, that really amplifies our suffering. Equanimity lets us step off that emotional roller coaster and make space for wisdom and compassion.
Okay, so less roller coaster, more smooth sailing. I can definitely get behind that. But how do we actually cultivate this sense of inner peace? Like, where do we even begin?
Well, the source is really clear about this. It all starts with mindfulness. That's the foundation for developing equanimity. Learning to just be present in this moment, no judgment, like that still point in the storm we were talking about earlier.
And they actually have a whole section on mindful breathing.
Yeah, yeah. It's a classic for a reason.
It's true. I've tried it, and it's way harder than it sounds.
Well, it's all about focusing on your breath. Noticing the feeling of each inhale and each exhale without trying to force it or anything. And the thing is, as you're doing this, thoughts are going to pop up.
Oh, yeah. Guaranteed. My brain never stops.
Totally. That's natural. Just notice them, but don't get caught in them. Don't get swept away. Just observe. Like watching clouds drift by. And then gently bring your attention back to your breath.
I like that. Clouds drifting by, so much less stressful than what my thoughts usually feel like.
Right. It takes practice, but it helps.
Yeah.
The source actually has this great step-by-step guide to mindful breathing. We'll link it in the show notes for everyone.
Awesome. Definitely check it out, listeners. It's a game changer.
It really is. With practice, this whole idea of observing without judgment, it becomes like this superpower. Helps you see things more clearly without your emotions calling all the shots.
Speaking of seeing things more clearly, the source also dives into this whole concept of impermanence, or let me see if I can get this right. Anicca? Is that how you say it?
Anicca.
Yes. Yeah. Nailed it. Okay. So, anicca impermanence. That's where things get kind of mind-blowing, right?
That's a big one. You ready to dive in?
Oh.
Totally. It's like this. Everything changes, right? Nothing stays the same. Our thoughts, emotions, situations, they're all in flux.
It's true when you really think about it, but it's also kind of hard to wrap your head around.
For sure. And we're always trying to resist it, We want things to stay the same, outcomes to go our way, even though deep down we know that's not how it works.
So how does understanding impermanence help us with equanimity? How are those two things connected?
Well, when you truly grasp that everything changes, it's easier to let go, You don't have to be so attached to outcomes. Embrace the maybe of it all.
The maybe of life. I kind of like that. It reminds me of that story from the source about the farmer who loses his horse.
Ah, yes. A classic example of non-attachment in action.
Right. Like all his neighbors are freaking out, telling him it's a disaster, but he's just like, maybe. And then the horse comes back with a whole herd. And they're all like, you're so lucky. And he's just like, maybe.
And then his son breaks his leg trying to train one of the new horses.
And the neighbors are all, oh no, such bad luck. And the farmer's just like, maybe.
Exactly. He's not getting caught up in labeling things as good or bad because he gets it. He understands that you never know the full story. What seems awesome now could lead to problems later. And what seems terrible might turn out to be a blessing in disguise.
It's like that quote, right? Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Exactly. So instead of that whole cycle of judgment and reaction, the farmer, he chooses equanimity. He meets each moment as it unfolds.
Which is easy to say, but I feel like in real life, it's so hard to do.
Oh, 100%. And it's not like we just become robots, you know? Non-attachment isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending you don't care.
Right, because that wouldn't be very authentic.
Exactly. It's more about a shift in perspective. Recognizing that clinging to things staying the same, that's what creates suffering.
So if we can loosen our grip a little, we might actually experience things differently.
Yes. With more ease, more peace, maybe even a little humor. Because life is unpredictable. It's going to throw you curveballs no matter what.
Okay, I'm convinced. Understanding impermanence totally leads to more peace of mind. But how do we actually put this into practice? Like, it's one thing to talk about it, but real life is a whole other ballgame.
You're preaching to the choir. It's like, okay, that's great in theory, but how do I deal with my crazy family?
Exactly. Or my overflowing inbox.
Right.
Or my to-do list that never seems to end.
Well, the good news is the source has some really practical advice. It talks about applying equanimity to specific areas of life, like relationships, for example.
Which, let's be honest, can be a minefield.
Totally. And one of the most helpful things I took away from the source was this idea of respond, don't react, especially when it comes to criticism or disagreements.
Oh man, that is so hard. My default is definitely to get defensive.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
But here's where mindfulness comes in again. That pause, that breath, it creates space. Instead of that knee-jerk reaction, you give yourself a moment to actually choose how you want to respond.
So instead of my emotions hijacking the conversation, I can actually hit the pause button and make a conscious choice.
Exactly. You can still set boundaries, disagree, stand up for yourself, but you're doing it from a place of balance, not just reacting from that emotional trigger point.
Which ultimately leads to healthier relationships all around.
Right, because who wants to be around someone who's always reacting from that supercharged emotional place? It's exhausting.
Okay, so relationships, check. What about stress? Because that's another biggie for me. It feels like there's just so much pressure these days.
Totally get it. The source actually talks about that too. And it suggests we start by getting super clear about our stressors, like literally identify them. What are the situations, people, even thoughts that tend to trigger that stress response?
So make a list, basically.
Yep. Get it all out of your head and on a paper. And then here's the really interesting part. Once you know what your triggers are, you can start to examine how your own attachments might be fueling the fire.
Okay, I think I get where you're going with this. So for example, if I'm constantly stressed about deadlines at work, is it because I'm like overly attached to getting everything perfect?
Exactly. Or are you attached to getting praise from your boss? Or maybe you're terrified of failing and what people will think.
And if I'm constantly checking my phone, stressing about likes and comments, is it because I'm like totally attached to what other people think of me?
Bingo. It's all about uncovering those attachments, bringing them into the light of awareness, and then we can start to loosen their grip.
And hopefully that translates into less stress.
Exactly. It's like you're creating a buffer zone between you and those stressors. You're not letting them control you in the same way. You're responding from a place of more wisdom, more clarity, and less reactivity.
So it's not that the challenges disappear, right? It's that we relate to them differently.
Yes. Like that calm ocean we talked about. The storms might still come, but you're not getting tossed around by every single wave. You're more grounded, more centered.
Okay, I'm loving all of this. So much good stuff. Now, I know the source also mentions some more advanced practices for cultivating equanimity, like specific meditation techniques and stuff like that.
It does. And those are definitely worth exploring further. But for today, for this deep dive, I think we've covered a lot of ground.
Totally. I feel like this is a great starting point for anyone who wants to explore equanimity and start applying it to their own lives.
It really is a great foundation. And, it made me think about that monk again.
The one who welcomed all those emotions, good and bad, like guests.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's equanimity in action, isn't it? It's not about like shutting down your emotions, but more about finding that center, that stillness inside yourself, no matter what's happening around you.
Yeah, like we're learning to navigate with a whole new compass now.
Right. And that compass, it always points to peace, even in the middle of the storm.
I love that visual. This deep dive has been amazing. I feel like we've covered so much ground, from the philosophy to like the real life stuff.
We really have. It's a journey,
Yeah.
cultivating equanimity. So just remember to be patient with yourself. Start small. Celebrate those little victories.
Yes, 100%. And speaking of celebrating, the source ends on such a beautiful note, like a blessing almost.
Oh, yeah. I love that part.
It says, "May equanimity be the steady ground beneath your feet, the calm in your heart, and the clarity in your mind."
Beautiful.
Right.
Really says it all.
It really does. And on that note, I think we've had a pretty zen-tastic deep dive.
I agree. Lots to think about.
To all you deep divers out there, thanks for coming along on this journey with us. Remember, life's full of ups and downs, but that inner peace, that equanimity, it's always there, waiting to be discovered. Until next time, happy diving.